completed chapter 1 of the Bhagavad Gita, and today, before starting the second chapter, which is the most important chapter in the Bhagavad Gita, I told you all that I'll be making a comparison between the philosophical viewpoints of Sankara, Ramanuja, etc. So today we'll be doing that, and we can have the discussion after this or on Sunday, as you wish. I presume that I should be able to complete it today, which I am expecting to do it. I don't know if I'm not able to complete it today. Maybe tomorrow we may have one more for that. But I don't think that it will be needed. Okay. Let me do the invocation. Om Namo Brahmadibhyo Brahma Vidya Sampradaya Kartrabhyo Vamsharishibhyo Mahadbhyo Namo Gurubhyaha Sruti Smriti Purananam Alayam Karunalayam Namami Bhagavat Padam Shankaram Loka Shankaram Shankaram Shankaracharyam Keshavam Badarayanam Suttavasya Krutau Vande Bhagavantau Punah Punaha Ishvaro Guru Ratmeti Murti Veda Vibhagine Vyomavat Vyapta Dehaya Dakshinamurtaye Namaha. Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Gita Dhyana Sloka, the last one. Yam Brahma Varunendra Rudramarutaha Stunnvandi Divyai Stavai Vedai Sangapada Panishadai Gayanti Yam Samaga Dhyanavastita Tadgatena Manasa Pasyanti Yam Yogino Yasyandam na Vidussura Suragana Devaya Tasmai Namaha Devaya Tasmai Namaha Devaya Tasmai Namaha. In one of the previous classes, if you recollect, I had taken the story of Shikanti, Bhishma, and the problem of defining Dharma. I'll use that to compare between the philosophers themselves. So, the earliest one being Shankaracharya. I'll start with Shankara's method. He avoids a narrative commentary on this issue because his bhashyas are not itihasa exegesis. He uses epic material only when it is serving either the philosophical angle or a dharmic principle. Therefore, from his viewpoint, there is very little or very less number of times he has referred Bhishma in his commentaries. But he has never named Shikanti in any of his commentaries as a person per se. Yet, the problem Shikanti has created, namely the conflicting vows, contextual duty, moral exception, has been repeatedly addressed not as Shikanti's issues, but as issues of those who are caught up in avidya. Therefore, Shankara abstracts the episode into two categories. One is vidhi, which is the rules, and exception, apavada. This is what Yash was asking for clarity. So, what is the vidhi and apavada has to be understood with the example in hand. As per him, Bhishma as an archetype of woe bound by dharma. Because he has taken a niyama dharma, means self-imposed woe. And this niyama dharma, from Shankaracharya's viewpoint, what Bhishma has done is niyama kartrutva swadharma. Karta. He is a karta. He is taking it as his own duty, born out of the vow he has taken or the promise he has given to his father. But from the point of view of Shankaracharya, this should not be treated as a vow, as an absolute. He should not have. In several places, especially in Bhashya 231, 238, 14.7, he insists that Swadharma binds only as long as it does not violate the higher dharmas. Means it will bind you, but it will not bind you if you are aligning yourself for a higher dharma. And the context for that is Desha, Kala, Avastha, etc., which can be suspended because they are all limited, time-bound, etc. So there is this classic illustration, what happens when a woe itself becomes a reason for adharma. Now the woe Bhishma has taken, he wants to stick to it because it is swabhimana karta, because he has decided to entrench himself in the woe he has taken. So there is an ego involved in it. And because of that ego, he is not deviating from that. Even though the Desha, Kala, Avastha has changed, he could have easily said that he could easily have taken a higher stand. And he could have taken that for the purpose of the war. I have to protect the king and the Hastinapura. Therefore, Avastha has changed. And Desha and Kala, based on which he gave the promise, was no more valid now, because father is no more, the mother these are the two people who heard the woe. They were not there. Therefore, Shankaracharya's viewpoint, it is that woe itself has become a means for an adharma to happen. Who committed and what happened is not the question. The woe is the reason why an adharma had to be done for the purpose of the war. Now, if you take the apavada logic or the exceptional rule, the unspoken role of Shikanti, Bhishma vow not to fight a woman is a personal exception. In a battlefield, the rule is that fight the enemy in war, whatever or whoever it is. You cannot make an exception there. So therefore, Bhishma's vow not to fight a woman is a personal exception for the vidhi, where he is violating the injunction of a war for upkeeping his personal woe, which is ego-based. And Shikanti is only a, what you call, instrument there, which puts the question itself into what is the purpose. Even though the woe is ethically pure, strategically it is disastrous. And karmically, it was ripe for overriding. But yet, Bhishma doesn't override it. Sankara is silent on these aspects that is why he doesn't talk about Shikanti's thing. Sankara is talking on Adhikari versus identity. What is that? Adhikari is eligibility is determined by function and capacity, not by mere category. Like the function and capacity of Shikanti as an enemy and a Yodha, a warrior who is ready to fight, should have been determined by the eligibility to whether the Shikanti should be challenged or not. Mere category that is, if she was a woman, should not have been applied by Bhishma. And without taking the names, Brahma Sutra Bhashya 1.3 and Gita chapter 3 and 18, Shankaracharya is giving this explanation. So, Bhishma's refusal to fight Shikanti therefore should not be upheld as a normative dharma, but as a personal exception. It's not a universal rule. Now look at Arjuna's action and how does Shankara justify that? In the 1817, Yasya na ahankrito bhavo sa na hanti na nibadhyate. He who acts without ego is not really killing, or he is not really bound by his actions, because there is no ego involved in it. Nimitta matram bhava savyasajin, that instruction from Krishna. Therefore, Arjuna shooting down Bhishma from the backside or behind Shikanti is morally troubling only if we look at it as an action judged by the superficial activity per se, or by the rigid woe logic, that is what Bhishma is holding on to. Whereas Shankaracharya's position dissolves the tension. There is nothing within. Arjuna acts as an instrument of cosmic justice. Bhishma's fall is karmically deserved because his karma has fructified. And no individual agent incurs sin, neither Shikanti nor Arjuna. Shikanti is only a karmic wedge in that whole picture. Now, if you look at the Advaitic undercurrent of the implicit or non-allegorical nature of that, from Advaita point of view, Bhishma represents Ahankara, bound by a personal woe, and he identifies with that. And Shikanti represents karma breaking identity levels. Arjuna represents Nishkama karma because he is the one who is now under the advice of Krishna, who has understood that there is no karta, no bhokta. And what does Krishna represent? As Ishvara, as an orchestrator. But Shankara never allegorizes this, and there is a lanchana, or what you call a inclination, or presupposes that in his commentaries. And he never defends Bhishma explicitly, because when Bhishma has taken the vow and everything, he never upholds Bhishma's refusal as an ideal to emulate. Never ever in any of his commentaries he has extolled Bhishma for whatever he has stood for. Why? Because Moksha Shastra cannot sanctify identity-based absolutism. Because it is an identity, and a Moksha Shastra should be generic in nature, it should be applicable for everyone. So Bhishma falling and lying on the bow of arrows for till the Uttarayana comes, and then he taking the mukti or moksha, Ichcha Svecha Marana, is not a Moksha Shastra rule which can be applied to everyone. His graciousness may be moral, but not his fall, which is instructional. So, what does this episode teach us? As per the thing, Dharma rigidly clung to will become a bondage, whatever may be the vow you take. You think that you are following the Dharma by taking a vow and adhering to that. This of the book, I can tell that there are people who have taken to sannyasa. I'm not quoting Shankaracharya, but this is my viewpoint. People who have taken sannyasa, taken the ochre robe, and found their misfit in the sannyasa, and then they bring all the bad names and their activities and everything is such despicable that the whole sannyasi clan is getting bad name because of that. This is the place where Shankaracharya's statement that Dharma rigidly clung to will become a bondage, and you should be ready to emancipate yourself from such clinging and become free so that you don't bring a bad name to the category. Dharma seen through karma and knowledge only can become liberation. The Dharma has to have Dharma is always accompanied with karma, because Dharma is to be executed or observed. Whatever there is what you call personality or the ego involved in it. So there will be a karma part with it. And when it is accompanied with the knowledge of the truth, the karma will not bind you. That is why when Dharma is seen through the karma and knowledge will become helpful in liberation from you. Now, it is important at this juncture that I may have to take a, principle which Shankaracharya uses in his Brihadaranya 4.4, where Janaka and Yajnavalkya is discussing. It is not for rebirth but it is discussing about agency and identity. Here, second is rebirth, etc. is being discussed, but that is not the doctrine in the 4.4. But it discusses about the agency, identity, etc. The mantras are 4.5, 4.7, 4.12. The summary of that, all the three mantras put together is Yadakari, Yadachari, Tada Bhavati. As one acts, as one conducts oneself, so one becomes. So here the agency which is derived out of identity is what it is coming into. So his commentary is uncompromising that doership, kartrutva, is leading to samsara. And ego or abhimana or identification is the reason for rebirth. Not action in itself, but a self-ascription of action, which binds. Action itself is never binding. Please understand that. Because that is part of avidya. But in the avidya, when the ego plays a role without the knowledge, avidya plays no role only in the absence of knowledge. This only is the lens that we will be looking this into the explanation what we needed. Shankaracharya repeatedly insists on one thing. The mantra from the Mundaka Upanishad. Na karmana na prajaya dhanena tyagena ege amritattvamanashu. That what? That not by action, nor having progeny, nor by wealth. Renunciation is of doership. Tyagena ege is the reason for emancipation or immortality. Dharma will not purify. And dharma cannot liberate. Dharma itself belongs to the avidya. Only dharma is because there is a doership. From Bhishma's inner position, Bhishma is morally impeccable, identified. Therefore, his self-defined kartrutva, that I am the one who has vowed, so I am going to honor it until my death. Therefore, aham karta mama vratam, that is, I am the doer, this is my promise or my vow, is in the avidya. However great that vow may be, the Bhishma, the name itself is because of that enormous vow he has taken, then the Devavrata gets the name as Bhishma. Therefore, Bhishma will remain in samsara, within the samsara. His refusal to fight Shikhandi is not to be praised or to be blamed. It is a fallout of the karma unfolding. He does not fall because he is wrong. He falls because he still feels that I am somebody who is to uphold my vow. And Shikhandi is the most misunderstood piece in the whole picture. Even though Shikhandi has no intrinsic significance, the gender, woe, grievance, even revenge, all of them are within the ambit of avidya. So from the Advaita lens, Shikhandi is a karmic continuity without the Atma involved in it. No enduring agent is passed from rebirth, from Amba to Shikhandi. Only samskara momentum, that avidya continues because the liberation has not taken place. Shikhandi is not a revengeful or adventure type of thing, but a karmic configuration from the actions of Bhishma by, kidnapping the girls. The fallout of that is what Shikhandi is. Shikhandi has not taken any vow, nor has she taken that I will avenge. But The event which was done was to Amba, not to Shiganti. But Shiganti is supposed to be the rebirth of Amba. It is only a karmic continuation. Like fire meeting the dry grass, karma meets its condition. Whereas if you look at Arjuna's action of killing Bhishma, if Arjuna has acted, I will kill Bhishma, then Arjuna will be in the bondage. But if Arjuna acts at that, action occurs in a field of battle. In the battle, whatever is happening is happening. I have no intent to kill Bhishma, but it is required for the war. So there is no bondage on the part of the Arjuna. Sa na hanti na nibadhyate, which is that 18 or 17 mantra, shloka of Gita says. The arrow belongs to the karma, not to the self. Therefore, Bhishma's body falls, and it is necessary for the war to come to an end. Why does Krishna not moralize the episode? Because it has already dissolved the premise. From the standpoint of Krishna, no injustice occurs, no justice is enacted, only avidya exhausting itself. From the pure Advaita point of view. Krishna's role is not ethical arbitration, but upadesha towards self-knowledge, or an instruction towards self-knowledge. Now the last aspect of Bhishma on the bed. Bhishma does not attain moksha in the battle, because he didn't die in the battle. He attains clarity only after the agency collapses. His duration, that when he lies on the Sharashaya or on the bed of arrows, he is put through immobility, pain and time, which forced withdrawal of the doership in the individual. This is that the kartrutva, as long as someone acts, he will continue to transmigrate or rebirth. When one ceases to be someone, he abandons his ego, individuality, then only one becomes free. So this episode has taught us one thing. Bhishma is not a tragic, he is instructional. Shikanti is not transgressive, he is also incidental. Arjuna is not violent, he is just a function in the whole picture. Dharma is not supreme, whereas self-knowledge, he can only relieve you or redeem you. Even the greatest dharmi remains bound by the ignorance or avidya, until the sense that I am not the doer or the doership dissolves. So, now, when we compare Sankara's handling with the discomfort Ramanuja is facing, we should look now into the comparison between Sankara and Ramanuja. Both of them accept that Bhishma is a Mahadharmi, is a great or, dharmic person. And both of them accept that his fall was necessary for the war to proceed further. If Bhishma had not fallen, the war would not have ended. And both of them agree that Shikanti is instrumental for the fall of Bhishma. And Arjuna's act is morally justified, but there is a question. How can a righteous man fall without dharma collapsing? That is the place where both Sankara and Ramanuja diverges. From the point of view Shankara, no moral crisis exists in the ultimate level because that is only the reality, ontological move. Sankara dissolved the crisis by reclassifying its level as dharma operates only in the avidya. And their kartrutva is an appearance. Karma binds only through identification. If the kartrutva is mine, then you are bound. Therefore, from the framework of Advaita, Bhishma's woe is empirically valid, his fall is karmically inevitable, and no one is really harmed. Because it is all happening in the avidya. There is no need to defend the episode ethically or morally or in the final sense. So therefore, the result of Shankara's standpoint is that Shikanti requires no justification, Arjuna requires no exculpation, or never Bhishma requires no vindication. Everything is already subsumed under avidya. That is why Shankara is remaining silent about the episode throughout his bhashyas. Never he has commented on any of them. Because it's not worth commenting as per him. Whereas Ramanuja has commented on this, saying that the moral order must be preserved at all levels. And Ramanuja cannot take the same stand as Sankara. Because for him, the world is real, the agency is real, dharma is eternally valid, and God is morally invested in all outcomes because the world is real. Thus, as per Ramanuja, the Bhishma Shikanti episode becomes a genuine moral problem. Therefore, there is a discomfort in Ramanuja when he explains that. Where it shows is that on Arjuna's action, especially in Gita Bhashya, Ramanuja refuses Shankara's non-agency reading. He insists that Arjuna really acts and the killing is real, and therefore there is a moral responsibility on the part of Arjuna. So he argues that killing is explicitly commended by God. Therefore, Arjuna's action, even though morally responsible, is morally pure. This is where the strain starts between the two. Whereas on the Bhishma's woe, Ramanuja subtly shifts the emphasis, saying that Bhishma's refusal is personally noble, but strategically flawed. But it is not adharmic. It is within the dharma. He avoids saying Bhishma's woe was excessive or identity bound like Shankara. That would imply that dharma can mislead, which is not acceptable to Ramanuja. Whereas Shankara says that dharma binds because it is within the avidya. And on Shikanti, Ramanuja never philosophically foregrounds Shikanti, avoids using him as a dharmic example, or does not universalize this case. Because Shikanti destabilizes the adhikara, fixed adhikara, moral agency, gender-linked duty due to that being female, central to the Dharma Shastra. Whereas Shankara dissolves them into avidya thing, so Shankara can remain silent, whereas Ramanuja must contain it. So where does the difference lie between the two? In the reality of the world, Shankara says ultimately it is false. The world is not real. It is only mithya. Whereas Ramanuja says that world is ultimately real. Now coming to the agency. Agency is due to avidya and therefore it is a superimposed, adhyasa. Whereas Ramanuja, it is real. What about dharma? Shankaracharya says it is binding because it is within the adhyasa. Whereas Ramanuja says that it is external and expressive of God. He is putting the dharma as order from the God and not agency of action by the individuals. Arjuna's killing activity is an apparent action as per Shankaracharya because that is still in the world of Nitya. Whereas for Ramanuja it's a real act instructed by Krishna and therefore a commanded act by the God. What about Bhishma's fall? It is a karmic exhaustion as per Shankaracharya, whereas divinely permitted necessity by Ramanuja for the war to end. And Shikanti is an incidental karma for Shankaracharya, and Ramanuja finds it a problematic anomaly which cannot be used anywhere for examples. Ramanuja must moralize what Shankara dissolves. That is where the difference lies. Ramanuja's God is personal, God is just, and God is responsive. Therefore, every event must be ethically legible. No appeal to mere appearance is allowed. So Ramanuja says that Bhishma's falls because God wills the war outcome, not because the war identity exhausted itself. Shankara does not need to comment on this. The philosophical cost for each of them. What is the Shankara's cost or Advaitic cost? Ethical discomfort at empirical level. That is, we all know that at the empirical level, this dharma and explanation of dharma is a discomfort. And acceptance of paradox. There are paradox which Shankara has to accept. What happens to Ramanuja? How he pays for it? He need to rationalize morally awkward episodes. He will have to bring in some moral excuses or definitions for awkward episodes like Shikanti's thing. And he becomes silent when dharma becomes ambiguous, which is that special case of Shikanti and Bhishma. That is why this episode quietly favors Shankara's framework better than the Ramanuja's thing. Not because Shankara is right, but because the episode refutes clean moral symmetry. Dharma, woe, identity, justice, etc. collides with one another. And therefore resolution becomes only through the agency collapse. Therefore it favors Advaita. That is exactly what Brihadaranya 4.4 teaches. And this Ramanuja resists because he cannot allow the agency to collapse because the agency is ordained by God. The final contrast is that Shankara says the episode is intelligible because no one truly acts. Therefore it is intelligible. Whereas Ramanuja says the episode must be justified because everyone truly acts under the instruction of God. Whereas the poor Shikanti stands where these two visions cannot agree. So therefore nobody talks about Shikanti. Now let us look, where is the disagreement between the there are two mantras in Brihadaranya which is apparently disagreeing between that in the Advaita itself. That is 3.8 where Gargi and Yajnavalkya discusses, whereas 4.4 is Yajnavalkya and Janaka discusses. We have to take them in the order that what 3.8 teaches is that Yajnavalkya Gargi discussion where Gargi asks Yajnavalkya about what is the substratum. Ultimately asking to define Brahma. Yajnavalkya handles it very intelligently, making Gargi silent not to ask further questions. Whereas in 4.4, Yajnavalkya gives the final instruction to Janaka, which is in line with what we discussed now, no agency either. There is an apparent disagreement between the two, because one place there is a agency for the Brahman, whereas in 4.4, there is no agency for Brahma. Sankara is able to reconcile that between the two, whereas Ramanuja resists the reconciliation. What are they? Let us look into that. Ontological absolute. The setting is that Gargi questions Yajnavalkya relentlessly about that what pervades and supports the cosmos. And the answer given by Yajnavalkya is Edadvai tad aksharam Gargi. What is that is pervades everything and supports everything is Akshara. And Akshara is described as Adrishta, unseen, Ashruta, unheard, Amati, unthinkable, Avijnada, unknowable. Yet, Akshara is the seer of seeing and hearer of hearing. And Shankara emphasized that Akshara is Nirguna, beyond all actions, relation, law. Dharma itself rests upon Akshara. Upon this Akshara, all Dharma, Adharma are strung. Edadaksharam Gargi Brahmana Abhivadanti. Brahmana Abhivadanti. So the reality is sustained by an absolute that is entirely non-participatory. That is why no agency is taken. Whereas 4.4 is not an ontological absolute, but a soteriological absolute. Where Yajnavalkya talks to Janaka, a final and private instruction. There is no debate, no spectacle. Yadakari, yadachari, tada bhavati, which we discussed earlier. The focus is on karma, desire, doership and rebirth. And therefore Sankara insists that this entire analysis operates within avidya. Its purpose is detachment. Its conclusion is renunciation of agency. Renunciation not as sannyasa. Agency renunciation, that I am the doer, this thing. Therefore, the core thrust of 4.4 is bondage and liberation are explained entirely through identification, not through ontology. What are the differences between 3.8 Gargi and Yajnavalkya with Yajnavalkya and Janaka is that what is ultimate? As per answer given to Gargi, it is Akshara beyond law. If you remember, in the Mundagopanishad, we heard this, Yaya Aksharam Adigamyate, Due Vidye Veditavyo, Paracha Paracha, Tatpara Yaya Aksharam Adigamyate. That Akshara is what is being explained to Gargi in a very long discussion between them. Whereas when he talks about the same ultimate to Janaka, he doesn't talk about the Akshara, which is the Odaprotam, means woven intricately in everything. But he says that it is a self beyond any doership. It is nirguna in nature. Therefore, what is the role of dharma in the two? Dharma rests upon the Brahman as per the answer given to Gargi, whereas he says dharma binds if you have agency. Therefore, don't have agency, don't have doership. Karma also is not mentioned to Gargi, but karma is central when it comes to the Yajnavalkya Janaka Samvada. Because the whole doership, if you want to negate it, it has to be based on the karma. And agency is diagnosed as false by that. Whereas there is no agency discussed with Gargi. In the tonality of 3.8 is cosmological, whereas that of 4.4 is existential. At the first glance, the teaching pulls in opposite direction. The Brahma grounds Dharma in 3.8, whereas Dharma is part of bondage as per 4.4. So what are they not contradictory? No, Shankara resolves them. Adhyaropa Apavada across chapters. His reconciliation is that 3.8 speaks from the Paramarthika standpoint, Brahman as a substratum, not an agent or no law, no action. Whereas in the 4.4, it speaks of Vyavaharika standpoint of view from the empirical transpoint, where it explains the bondage pedagogically so that it may be negated. The crucial move is Dharma is upheld only to be transcended. Dharma is upheld in the empirical level only for to be transcended. Thus, the 3.8 with Gargi, he established what is Brahman, whereas in the 4.4 with Janaka, Shankara dismantles what binds the empirical world and how you can dissolve it. Different instruction level, that's all. But Ramanuja cannot accept this resolution. Refuses the standpoint and bifurcation. For Ramanuja, Brahman is qualified by the world. Dharma is an external expression of Brahman's nature. There is no level where Dharma is merely provisional. It is applicable all the levels. Therefore, for him, 3.8, God is a moral governor, not Brahman. And 4.4 is the individual's journey or the Jiva's journey within God's law. But this creates a strain if Dharma is eternally rests in Brahman. How can renunciation of doership negate its binding force? But Ramanuja must say, liberation comes not by dissolving agency, but by offering agency to God. Whereas Sankara says liberation comes by seeing agency never existed in the beginning itself. It was never there. So the two philosophical fault line between Sankara and Ramanuja is that levels of truth, Sankara, it is essential, whereas there is no levels of truth as per Ramanuja. Everything is under the God's instruction. Dharma, as per Shankara, is instrumental, whereas for Ramanuja it is intrinsic. Agency, doership, it's a superimposition or adhyasa for Shankara, whereas it is real and but dependent upon the jiva. Moksha, liberation, is only possible with knowledge as per Shankara. Whereas Ramanuja says knowledge and devotion is required. So what is the role of 4.4 where you negate your agency? Shankara says it is for negation. That agency appears to be there is only to negate that there was never an agency in all the three states. Whereas for Ramanuja, agency is required for regulating the life of individuals. Now, when I bring Madhwacharya into what happens is we have to take 5 tightly ordered movements. What 3.8 state, we have to strip it to the bones. Madhwa's principled refusal of agency dissolving in 4.4 because Bheda is absolutely real. And how Madhva absoluteless 3.8, the role of Akshara and consequences of Dharma, agency and example of Bhishma, Shikanti, etc. Then we will make a comparison between Shankara, Ramanuja and Madhva. When we look into 3.8 as per Madhva, Edadvai tadaksharam gargi, edasmin noda prodam cha. That is what the mantra says, that it is the whole akshara, everything is sung as warp and woof in the string. Edasminnu khalu akshare gargi akasha oda prodascha. This imperishable heaven, earth, dharma, adharma, all of them are woven on akshara. Whereas Shankara reads that akshara is nirguna, dharma rests without affecting Brahman. Madhva will not allow this passivity. For Madhva, the foundational move is that no standpoint is splitting. Madhva rejects the very tool that makes Shankara's reconciliation possible. What is that? There is nothing called Paramarthika or Vyavaharika. There is only Vyavaharika. No Adhyasa theory and no provisional dharma. If something is taught in the Shruti, it is eternally real. Therefore, karma is real because Shruti teaches that. Agency is being real because Shruti teaches it. Dharma is real because Shruti talks about it. The difference is Veda is real because Shruti says that. Madhva's identification in his Bhashya and Anuvachyana, Madhva insists that Akshara is not impersonal substitute, whereas Akshara is Vishnu or Narayana, possessed of infinite auspicious qualities. Therefore, God is the ontological and moral governor of the universe as per Madhva. Dharma and adharma do not merely rest on God, but are instituted, sustained and judged by God. And there is no level where dharma dissolves. It is eternally true. Madhva does not deny 4.4, but he is reinterpreting it differently. But yadakari, yadachari, tadabhavadi, that as you do, as you think, so you become. He says that karma really produces results. The difference in the souls, jiva bheda, are real and eternal. Some souls are eternally bound, some are eligible for liberation, some are predestined for darkness as per Madhva. Therefore, the agency dissolvement is negated by Madhwa. And he classifies the doctrine, no agency negation. And if he is talking about the Shikanti Bhishma Singh, he is unambiguous where others are subtle. Bhishma acts righteously, he falls because Vishnu's will, the war outcome, not because of woe identity collapse. And Shikanti is a means employed by God as per Madhva, and not a karmic irony. And it is not a metaphysical ambiguity. Arjuna truly kills and truly merits the divine approval because it's a divine order which Arjuna does. His act is righteous because God commanded it. No ethical discomfort remains because God's will defines dharma. Therefore, Madhva absolutizes 3.8, that Brihadaranya mantra. Because without it, moral order becomes negotiable, agency becomes ambiguous, divine justice becomes indirect. So Madhva refuses it, saying that 3.8 is Aksharam is final, 4.4 is subordinate. The difference is between them is eternal because governance is personal as instructed by the God. Of course, for his philosophy, there is a cost Madhva has to pay. Madhva gains moral determinacy, clear agency, strong theism. But he pays for loss of radical non-duality, eternal hierarchy among souls, no ultimate dissolution of karma logic. What Sankara would call as samsara eternalized, Madhva would call Advaita as nihilism of dharma. Now, we will place the three side by side. Brahman, Sankara says Nirguna, Ramanuja says Saguna, qualified Saguna, whereas Madhva says it's personal Vishnu. Dharma is instrumental as per Sankara, eternal service as per Ramanuja, whereas it is a divine command by Madhva. Agency, doership, it's a superimposed adhyasa by Sankara, whereas it is real and dependent upon the individual by Ramanuja, and it is fully real under the divine command by Madhva. Now, Bhishma's fall is karma exhaustion as per Sankara, whereas a divine necessity by Ramanuja, and Madhva says it's God's will. Shikanti is a karmic wedge as per Sankara. Ramanuja doesn't have an answer for that. He says it's an anomaly, whereas Madhva says it is instrumental. This being the three, where does Aurobindo stand in this regard? He enters this discussion completely in a different angle than classical Vedanta. He is not choosing between Brihadaranya 3.8 or 4.8 the way Sankara does, Ramanuja or Madhva does. Instead, he reframes the problem itself. To see his stand clearly, we must ask a different question altogether. What if neither the dissolution of agency as per the Advaita nor the absolutization of the divine law by Madhva is final, but both are stages in an evolutionary unfolding consciousness? This is Aurobindo's move. He says that Aurobindo's fundamental rejection, no last word standpoint. There is no last word. He explicitly rejects Sankara's world negating absolutism. He negates the Madhva's eternal dualistic fixity. And he even negates Ramanuja's static harmony. From Aurobindo's point of view, reality is dynamic. Consciousness evolves. Truth is not exhausted by any single Upanishadic standpoint. Therefore, 3.8 is true, 4.4 is true, but neither is complete by itself. It is in the process of evolution. So he is reinterpreting the Brihadaranya Akshara, saying that, again, Sankara, he says that Akshara is not a sterile, impersonal absolute. He calls Sankara's absolute as sterile, impersonal, Nirguna Brahman. Whereas he says it is Sachidananda, being consciousness and bliss, but capable of manifesting without losing transcendence. He also disagrees with Madhwa. Akshara is not a limiting personal ruler. God is not merely a lawgiver, and Dharma is not fixed by God or a fixed code by God. Whereas Akshara is a transcendent foundation of an evolving manifestation, ever evolving. Dharma rests in Brahman because Brahman is becoming, is not a being. Not because Brahman is static, because it is kinetic, ever evolving. So Aurobindo accepts 4.4 against Madhwa, saying karma is real, becoming is real, evolution through action is real, but he rejects Shankara's conclusion that karma must be negated. For Aurobindo, karma is not a bondage by nature, whereas karma is a means of conscious evolution. Bondage rises only when action is inconsistent. Thus, 4.4, where the agency is dissolved, he says one acts and becomes not toward dissolution, but toward divinization, to become more and more divine. Therefore, the synthesis which Aurobindo says is Akshara plus Kshara plus Purushottama. He reads the Upanishad through the Gita's triad. Akshara is transcendent and absolute. Kshara is world of becoming and karma. And Purushottama, the divine who holds the both. Uttama Purushastvanyaha. That is the place where that comes, Gita says. This is decisive, whereas where Shankara collapses Kshara into Akshara, Madhwa separates them eternally, Aurobindo integrates them dynamically. Dharma in Aurobindo's framework, Dharma is not an eternal law, opposing Madhwa, not merely provisional bondage as per Shankara, whereas it is a progressive expression of divine consciousness in action, as per Aurobindo. Thus, the moral codes are transitional. Ethical paradox like Bhishma Shikandi are signals of evolutionary tension. The new dharmas emerge as consciousness rises. That is why Aurobindo speaks of spiritual law of the future. The Bhishma Shikandi reread in the eyes of Aurobindo is that Aurobindo would say, he has not mentioned anywhere, but if we are to read his philosophy and explain it, Bhishma represents static dharma, law bound by righteousness. Shikandi represents disruptive evolutionary force. Krishna represents supramental guidance. Arjuna represents the evolving human instrument. Bhishma falls not because he is bound by ignorance as per Shankara, nor merely because God wills as per Madhwa, but because the static righteousness must yield to the evolutionary necessity. This is uniquely Aurobindonian. That's why Aurobindo is closest at the same time farthest to Sankara. He is closest to Sankara because he accepts Akshara. His acceptance is transcendence. He accepts freedom from egoistic agency. But he is at the same time farthest from Sankara because he refuses to negate the world. He insists on divine action. And he sees liberation as a transformation, but not as an escape. Whereas Sankara, moksha is a cessation, where Aurobindo, moksha is a transfiguration. So when we look from the different four thinkers, the ultimate reality, Sankara is Nirguna, Ramanuja qualified Brahman, Madhwa is personal God, for Aurobindo it is Sachidananda. The empirical world, for Sankara it is an appearance, Ramanuja and Madhwa they are real, whereas for Aurobindo it's becoming. It is ever evolutionary nature. So is the Dharma is a bondage for Sankara, service of God by Ramanuja, whereas it is a command by God by Madhwa, whereas it is a evolutionary necessity for the world becoming. Resolution. The knowledge dissolves differences. As for Madhwa, as Ramanuja, only surrender can dissolve the differences. For whereas Madhva, obedience in God's order is the resolution, whereas Aurobindo says the transformation is the resolution. Aurobindo says that 3.4 without 4.4 gives sterile transcendence, whereas 4.4 without 3.8 gives a blind becoming. Both are not independent. Therefore, truth is a conscious unity. Now, I think we'll take another 10 more minutes and stop there. I can take the question answer along with that. There is this, what we call it as Kashmir Shaivism. That is also part of this whole thing. When we look into the aspect of Kashmir Shaivism, where does it come into the picture? Let us look into the aspect of Kashmir Shaivism. Where does it fit into the whole picture? So, when we look into the Kashmir Shaivism, comparison becomes decisive because it shows that Sankara Aurobindo opposition is not exhaustive. Kashmir Shaivism offers classical pre-modern Indian system that already does with far greater metaphysical rigor much of what Aurobindo attempts without abandoning the Upanishadic non-duality. So if we depend upon the Kashmir Shaivism, it is bringing the modern aspect of Aurobindo's attempts. At the same time, it doesn't abandon the non-duality of Sankara. It is a merger of the two. All three systems comfort the same paradox. How can the absolute be non-dual, perfect and free, yet appear as a differentiated world without contradiction? Their answers differ radically. Sankara's solution is baseline, when we take it as a baseline, says that Brahman is actionless, changeless, whereas world appearance is due to Maya or Avidya. And Maya is anirvachaniya, liberation is negation of appearance. What is the strength of Madhwa, Shankaracharya's testing? Absolute transcendence is preserved and logical austerity is there. But what is the cost he has to pay? The world must be ontologically downgraded from an evolution of Aurobindo to mere appearance. And what Shakti with the Kashmir Shaivism says becomes extrinsic or superimposition. Now Kashmir Shaivism, the forgotten classical alternative, because it's no more in vogue as a philosophy. Their central claim is that the absolute is consciousness, chit. That is intrinsically dynamic, spanda. So it has got more or like, the Aurobindo's philosophy saying that it is Sachidananda and evolving for divinity, towards divinity. This is not the modern speculation which is by the Aurobindo's thing, but it is articulated before Sankara, centuries before Sankara by Utpaladeva, Abhinava Gupta, Kshemaraja, etc. So it is much before Shankara's dominance. And they reinterpreted Maya not as ignorance, but as a real tattva. Maya is a real tattva, principle, one of the 36 tattvas of a contractive power of Shiva. Maya limits the infinite without falsifying it. Something similar to what Aurobindo says. It is infinite in nature, Akshara, but it is at the same time chooses to limit for evolving divinity. Therefore, the definition contradicts Sankara. The ignorance is Anuvamala, Anuvamala, not Maya. Kashmir Shaivism distinguishes between Maya as a cosmic differentiation, whereas Anuvamala is a feeling of smallness. It is not that I become limited, but there is a feeling of that I am a limited individual. Shankara collapses this into avidya, whereas Aurobindo intuits this distinction but does not systematize it clearly. The world, as per the Kashmir Shaivism, is real but dependent. It is real because it is Shiva's own vibration. It is not an illusion or a mistake like Shankara says, but Jagat Eva Shiva. The world itself is Shiva. Yet, the world is dependent, not autonomous. The difference is real but non-separate. It is really confusing in the sense that it is real but at the same time not different. It is not independent at the same time dependent. This anticipates Aurobindo but with classical metaphysics. What about the knowledge liberation which Advaita says, talks about? Knowledge is for negation, liberation is disappearance of the world of significance. Whereas Kashmir Shaivism says that knowledge is pratyabhijna, it's a recognition. It is not something which is independent and the nature of Atman or Brahman. Whereas liberation is recognizing oneself as Shiva as per the Kashmir Shaivism. Then what happens after the liberation? As per them, the world does not disappear, but the bondage disappears. This aligns against Shankara, but he is closer to Aurobindo. Now comes two words called action and Shakti, that is karma and Shakti. As per Shankara, action implies limitation, Brahman does not act. Whereas Kashmir Shaivism says that Action is a free play, Leela, of Shiva. And Shakti is intrinsic, not superimposed. It is intrinsic to Shiva, not superimposed on this thing. Immutability and dynamism both coexist as per Kashmir Shaivism. Shiva is, this is the beauty of it, Shiva is a motionless as motion. As motionless as motion. This solves the paradox Aurobindo struggles to articulate philosophically. That is why there is a close proximity between Aurobindo and Kashmir Shaivism. Where Kashmir Shaivism differs, where is it differing from Aurobindo? Despite similarity, there are decisive differences. No historical evolution. Kashmir Shaivism is timeless. Whereas Aurobindo's this thing is evolving according as per the time. No future supramental species. Whereas Aurobindo defines there is future supramental species which will be coming up. No progressive cosmic goal, whereas there is progressive cosmic goal as per Aurobindo. That's the difference between these two. Aurobindo adds teleology, whereas Kashmir Shaivism lacks it. Liberation is individual recognition and not a collective transformation. No divine life on earth, as per Kashmir Shaivism, which is not as per Aurobindo. Liberation does not require remaking matter. So now let us put the axis on these things with Sankara, Kashmir Shaivism and Aurobindo. What is the ultimate, absolute? As per Sankara, it is Nirguna Brahman. As per Kashmir Shaivism, it is Chit and Spanda. Whereas Aurobindo, it is Satchidananda. Maya is ignorance as per Sankara, whereas a limiting power self-imposed by Shiva to become the individual. Whereas it is a creative power of Satchidananda for evolution. The world as per Sankara is mithya. For Kashmir Shaivism, it's a real expression of Shiva. It is not different from Shiva. Whereas Aurobindo, it is an ongoing evolution to a supramental state. Ignorance is avidya as per Sankara. Anvamala is accepted as a status in the Shiva Shakti, but not separate from Shiva Shakti. Whereas Aurobindo doesn't accept it as, but he says it as conscience. Liberation, as per the Advaita or Sankara, is negation of duality, non-dual. Whereas Kashmir Shaivism recognizes liberation because the world is not different from Shiva. Whereas Aurobindo says it's an ongoing transformation to a state of supramental. Karma, action is binding as per Sankara, whereas it's a free play, Leela, by Shiva. Whereas it's a divine work as per Aurobindo. Why Kashmir Shaivism is the missing middle link between Sankara and Aurobindo? Because Kashmir Shaivism shows how you can reject Maya as illusion, affirm real manifestation, preserve at the same time the non-duality without introducing modern evolutionary metaphysics like supramental. Aurobindo's philosophy is closer to Abhinavagupta than to Sankara, but historically more radical than both. The final judgment, very precise, is that Sankara safeguards the transcendence by negation. Kashmir Shaivism safeguards non-duality by dynamism. Aurobindo safeguards fullness by futurity. All three are coherent. They disagree on what perfection must look like. look like. So this is something which I have compared and made it available for us to understand and look at it. Now, which one suits you or which one is acceptable to you, you will be leaning towards that. Which is right, which is wrong, I cannot say. But Gita, in the eyes of Sankara, is one thing which will be taken by me. At the same time, where I feel that the explanation given by Sankara is not right, or he is finding it difficult to explain, I will find which of these philosophies is best suited for explaining that, so that we get a clear picture of what is Krishna's intent in his saying such verses where we should look for the answer. Hope this has given some help to you, all of you. Thank you all. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. Thank you. Dhanyavada.
Thank you very much, Bindoji. That was a very profound section of all these four different acharyas, and looking forward to your interpretations as you go forward. Thank you. I think we have Ganesh Prasad ji and Spice ji. Karen is also coming up.
Namaste, Binduji. Namaste, Prakash.
Namaste.
Namaste, Karen. Binduji, one question comes in is that, I have come in later part of it and maybe you might have covered it, but I just need to know, is that when we compare Kashmir Shaivism, Bhagwan Abhinav Gupta's work and Shankaracharya's work, but then even in Saundarya Lahari, doesn't he lean towards more of an Kashmir Shaivism kind of a philosophy? It begins with Shiva Shakti Yukta. So he speaks about that, Shiva Shakti together and how the manifestation of world happens. So am I wrong, am I right, or is it correlated there? And
what you said is right, but where you assume it is by Adi Shankara, the one who wrote the Bhashya, that is where I differ. I don't think it is the same Shankaracharya who wrote Saundarya Lahari.
Okay.
Because if you look at consistency in the Bhashya, right from Ishavasya Upanishad to Brihadaranya Upanishad in the Upanishads, Bhagavad Gita and Brahma Sutra, the stand taken by the Bhashyakara, whom I call it as Adi Shankara, is very consistent. His philosophy he has not diluted anywhere. But when it comes to Vivek Chudamani or Saundarya Lahari, and there are a lot of axillary creation or what is attributed to Shankaracharya, there he is not telling the same thing what he is telling in the Bhashya, which makes Madras University analysis, as well as which I have studied, also looked into. I feel there is this inconsistencies in those things. So it has to be one of the following as Shankaracharyas, not the one who wrote the Bhashya.
The only argument which if you look at it, the evidential part of it, yes, because I also studied and I thought it's quite contradictory, but then he wrote Bhaj Govindam as well. So either he's going from Advaita to Vishishta Advaita, or he's fluctuating between them. And then when you read because text and the scripture says that Saundarya Lahari is written by Shankara, and that's the original Shankaracharya what we are speaking about, and the story goes on. So when you say from analytical point of view, yes, agreeable that it cannot be one person's work. But I don't know. That's why I said, it's just to understand what's your take on it.
That's why I have been through and through only sticking to the Adi Shankara who wrote the Bhashyas. Even though I took Aparokshanubhati in between, the verses after 100, I really do not attribute it to the Adi Shankara who wrote the Bhashya, but more by Vidyaranya himself who wrote the commentary on it. But I didn't want to dispute it or make a confusion because it was aligned towards Advaita. Therefore, I continued that 100 to 144 verses also. Because he redefined the Ashtanga Hatha Yoga with Advaita Yoga, Raja Yoga. So therefore, he has not distorted Bhashyakara's words, but he has brought in the yoga aspect into the Advaitic analysis of Dhrit Drishya Viveka aspect of it. Thank you, Spice. Namaste, Ganesh Prasad. You have anything more?
I wanted to thank you, Bindoji, because that's one thing I just wanted to understand. But yeah, it makes sense what you say. Yes. Thank you.
Thank you, Spice. Namaste, Ganesh Prasad.
Namaste, Bindoji.
Namaste.
Do we have the time?
Yeah, go ahead.
I mean, I have, today it is pretty strong nut to crack.
You have to listen to the replays again.
Yeah, and I have to listen to. And one more thing is, when you put forth all these four giants together, it is certainly very difficult to digest, number one. Number two, dharma and karma and truth. These are the three words which you, established a relationship. They are saying that dharma can be executed only through karma.
Yes.
And both of them must adhere to truth at the end of the day.
Yes.
Truth is the ultimately guiding force for both dharma and karma, isn't it?
Yes. But that is where the difference lies, Ganesh. The Shankaracharya says that there is no karma or dharma. In reality, it is only an appearance, adhyasa. Whereas Ramanuja says it's a, God's will. Thing. Whereas Madhwa says it's a command by the God. Whereas Shaivism and Aurobindo says it is Sachidananda playing around, Leela Nyaya. That is one where he, without losing his infinity, he is deciding to
project,
become finite for the purpose of supramental or divinity, growth or the eternal growth. Whereas that is not what is acceptable to Shankara. Because if you bring in changes is within.
Yeah.
See, that is where I had not got enough time. Otherwise, this will go on at least 3 hours. Any change is within the space and time. So Shankara doesn't accept space and time outside avidya or maya. It is a creation of avidya or maya. That is why Shankara is able to say that dharma and karma is within avidya.
Yeah, dharma operates only in avidya. And in that statement, when it comes, I got a confusion about that statement in Gita. Dharma samsthapanarthaya sambhavami yuge yuge. how does it correlate, or what does it allude at?
Yeah, we will take that verse, and that time I'll explain it.
Yeah.
Let us not jump down to that verse,
Sure.
because you have to build the philosophy in such a way that when in the 18th chapter, when it comes to that, we should be clear. Why is that sarva dharman parityajya mamekam saranam vaja, and then even sambhavami yuge, why is he saying that? Why is that where is the time when time itself is in avidya?
And I wondered about the way you have the disclaimer today, and it was very amazing. And you have left the audience to decide to which side they actually oscillate, to which of the four things that our natural intelligence or our natural, we inflict time towards that you have left to.
It naturally, Ganesh, I don't want to influence anybody.
Yeah,
each one of us have got vasanas or inclinations towards certain, pet ideas, which I would call it as pet ideas. And it is free for us to choose that. Who am I to make you change or make anybody change from your interest to something to you should follow only this? No. Where it is suiting, you think whether you want to change, you can change. That is where you are replacing your vasana. But if you don't want to replace it, but you believe that what your inclination is right, you should stick to it.
Yeah. It goes well with everyone in that case.
Yes.
No influencing. It is only dispassionate presentation, objective presentation, and where the choice is left to the adhikari, whatever he feels like.
Yes. That's why I said, where Shankaracharya is finding it difficult to explain the verse within the realm of Advaita, I will explain that, but I'll explain why he is finding it difficult to explain it.
Yeah.
That is why these four, 5 philosophies, I put it in the front, that next chapter onwards, it is becoming a serious subject.
Yeah. That's true.
So we should know clearly before we step into that chapter. Monday onwards, we are going to start second chapter. So before that, I wanted to do that.
Yeah.
Even if I had to take a class tomorrow specifically for that. But I was able to finish it by 10 o'clock. But question answer session doesn't make me tired or make me, exhausted. Because that gives me freedom to express myself.
We are lucky to have a person like you. Wonderful. Thank you, Bindoji.
Thank you, Ganesh.
Koti pranam. Thank you.
Namaste, Karan.
Bindoji, wow. I'm so happy that you took this approach from all four. I don't have a question right now, but I just want to say very, very nice. When I was listening, I could recognize truth in all four of it. And that is the beauty of it. And I just wanted to thank you. And that I'm going to have to listen to it again to really see the differences, but also the similarities between all four. The way you brought that was very neutral, and I'm really grateful for that.
Thank you, Karan. That's why, as Ganesh Prasad said, I left it to the individuals to choose.
But it's not really, you don't have to choose that what because if you look at Shaivism, the Kashmir, if it fills up the holes that Shankara cannot explain, and it will satisfy that urge to know, that is the beauty of it, because you can take in order to know who you are, what your nature is, and that is the beauty. Because if I am saying I'm not the body, and the common expression is then I'm awareness, okay, that doesn't say anything, it doesn't explain anything, it doesn't do anything, and there's a lot of details in all the other ones that might fill in those gaps. And I love that. So thank you.
Thank you, Karan. Namaste, Vinod.
Vinodji, it was one of the best connection between not connection, what you can call the correlation or whatever between the three, how they interpreted. And, it was, I hope it will really help a lot of people here in the group. We all keep fighting about, masters, right? So the way I normally, what I normally have thought about is that Shankara concentrated on one seeing the reality the way it is. Meaning, it's like, like for example, I have to recognize that everything is a superimposition and all that. And, and ultimately there's only one self and things like that. And he was not worried about explaining how this reality has come about. One, because it's just it's just a kind of non-existent entity anyway. So not to worry about, not bother about it. The second reason could be that anyway, if one is really aware, he would anyway know how the reality has come about. Okay, which is what Kashmir Shaivism goes into deeper detail. Okay, so it seems to me that Shankara's this thing was quite deliberate, that he didn't focus on what doesn't have to be focused upon to really understand the nature of reality. That's how I have kind of understood it.
Okay. Namaste, Balaji.
Pranams, Binduji. Sir, you said in the course of your conversation that you rate Aurobindo ji is greater than Adi Shankara.
I didn't say that.
No,
don't put words into my mouth. You can listen to the replay.
No. How do you rate Mr. Aurobindo?
You're talking about Sri Aurobindo?
Yes, Sri Aurobindo. You kind of stated that, I don't know how many people have heard, right? Or did I hear it wrong or something? Right? You stated that your perception of Aurobindo is greater than Shankaracharya.
I don't think only you might have heard. Did Ganesh Prasad, Spice, or Vinod, or Prakash, did any one of you hear it that way?
No. You were just saying somewhere what difference in opinion or what the different thinking was, but there was no comparison. You didn't say who was greater than what.
Yes.
I don't think that was the message of yours.
That's right.
Probably
Exactly.
you could have stated that the cognizance of Vedanta, the cognizance of Bhagavad Gita in reference to Aurobindo was greater than what was inferred by Shankara. I don't see somewhere.
No. Actually, he gave the comparative analysis of all the four different schools of philosophy regarding certain aspects like dharma, like akshara, and all those things, how we can view all these aspects under the 4 categories. That's what he said. And no comparison as such. He objectively puts it across. That's what we have.
I checked on the replay actually.
Yeah, please. Do that.
Vinodji wouldn't have stated that, see, there is no comparison at all when it comes to Advaita philosophy. Of course, I understood. But an avatara cannot be compared to an ordinary individual like Aurobindo. He got into Tiviravada, the Indian freedom struggle, etc., etc. Being a Bengali, he got into a lot of issues actually. He fled to Pondicherry and all. Of course, Aurobindo. No, wait.
Okay.
Aurobindo is a great man, no doubt about it. But then when it comes to Sankara, he is not as great as, in fact, even Vivekananda. Of course, he saw Krishna and all. Right,
Balaji, we are all, at least I would say that I am such an insignificant person even to evaluate what these great masters have contributed to the world. So I will not make a statement where I will compare between one great person to another great person. It will be foolhardiness on my side to make a statement of that type.
It could be a mea culpa, but then just let us look into the replays. Right,
you look into the replay and tell me at which time stamp it is that mentioned.
Because you said that Aurobindo's inference of Vedanta philosophy is greater than Sankara. Somewhere you said. Right, anyway, I will
you let me know which timestamp where it is appearing. Okay? I don't remember having said that, nor do I say that I said that. Because I don't have anything such that in my mind to say that Aurobindo is greater than Sankara or Sankara is greater than Aurobindo. No. There four, 5 philosophies I've placed all the cards in front of all of you. That's all. Okay, Prakash, can we stop?
Okay. Yes. So thank you everyone for coming. Tomorrow the session continues.
Not tomorrow.
Not tomorrow.
Tomorrow is off day.
Off day. Sunday we have an open discussion, at which point these points can be discussed further. And Monday we resume class the number 6.
Second chapter will start.
Second chapter starts. Thank you, Bindoji, and thanks everyone for coming and attending. Over to you, Bindoji.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all for being patient for such a long session. See you all on Sunday, and we'll continue Bhagavad Gita on Monday onwards. Thank you all. Hari Om.
Thank you, Bindoji.